All right, let's just do the TLDR right out of the gate. Travel's coming back in a really big way. And if you want to take epic photos, this is the lens for it. All right, now let's go explore why. So this past month, my wife and I, along with my sister-in-law, set off on an epic 1,500-mile road trip coming down the Columbia River Valley Gorge here in the Pacific Northwest, cruising down the Oregon coast, and then ultimately ending up in Southern California in Laguna Beach. Now, as any of you know who watch this channel, my wife and I both shoot on the EOS R mount, or the RF mount system. My wife has the EOS R, I have the R5, we have the full kit of RF lenses. Now, going into this trip, I had the 15-35, which is currently on my camera right now. I had that kind of loaded up because I thought, you know, hey, if we're gonna be out traveling, I kind of probably want something wide just to get everything in the shot, and if I'm in tight spaces. Like, the 15-35 is my favorite lens. I'll say that right out in front. I do need to make a video about it. I'll get there, but this was just too sweet to miss. So we're diving into the 70-200, because what happened on this trip was we stopped off at Multnomah Falls, right off the freeway heading into Portland, maybe like 30-45 minutes outside of Portland. And there was just something inside of me. The Holy Spirit of lenses, if you will, said, you want to take the 15-35 off and put the 70-200 on. And I can't argue with that. Can't argue with that. I'm glad I listened, because, whew, oh man, so many great shots. And I ended up leaving this lens on the EOS R5 pretty much the entire trip. I was only kind of going back to the 15-35 to take some video, to do some vlog style stuff that I'm gonna probably put out later. But this, for all of my photography, this became the go-to. Easy. Like, I'm gonna just take you guys through some of the shots that I took and why this lens is so good for travel, why it became my go-to. It was like kind of packed away in my kit. Didn't think I would use it much on this trip. Thought, oh, it'd be nice to have. But no, this thing became the go-to lens. And I wanted to make this video because specifically with travel coming back, I think all of us want to be able to capture those moments, celebrate them. I think there's like a new sort of feeling that we all have when we get to experience something with people we love, new environments, beautiful, breathtaking environments after everything that's gone on in the last 18 months or so. We want to enjoy life, and we want to capture it, share it, have it, and be able to remember it. I made a video in the past about how important it was that I had all this photography built up going into pandemic and all the lockdowns and stuff, because that allowed me to reflect and look back and sort of plan for the future now, when we could kind of go out and do cool stuff like this. So without further ado, this is it, taking a look at the 70-200 and why it's great specifically for travel. It's great for other stuff too, like wildlife photography, landscapes, things like that, but travel, let's talk about it. So first up is image stabilization. This lens is image stabilized. Now, what that means is it will work in tandem with something like the EOS R5 and give you just a ton of stops, I think 6 stops of image stabilization. On the EOS R, now that camera body doesn't have in-body image stabilization, but having a lens that has image stabilization is great, and particularly with a longer focal length, because once you're out at 70, 100, or even 200, you're so locked in on that subject at a distance that any micro movements that you may have, right, could just put you in a completely different stratosphere of, you know, what you're trying to shoot, like just any little movement. And now the entire time I had this out, I was shooting off of just handheld. I had no tripod, just kind of run and gun. Particularly here in this photo that I'll show you, we're at Multnomah Falls, first day of our trip. I shot this at 1/60th of a second shutter speed, which is really slow shooting handheld with a focal length this wide. I shot this shot at 100 millimeters, and you can see like that water is still really soft. It's not quite a super long exposure, but it's not super tight where the water looks harsh. It allows the sort of environment to breathe, and it just gives it that epic kind of feel to it. This shot would be really hard to get if this lens was not image stabilized. Now, especially if you're running around traveling, you're probably not gonna bring I don't even know where the bracket is to connect this thing to the tripod, because I'm not gonna use it that way. When we're traveling, when we're out running around doing stuff, trying to make deadlines and show up to an Airbnb, check in on time, I don't have time to set up a tripod and do all these things. I'm just trying to get the shot, and yeah, having image stabilization absolutely necessary. So that's the first one with this lens. Now the second one for this lens is image separation. I think this is something that doesn't get talked a lot about when it comes to lenses. You often talk about a wider aperture, maybe giving you more separation on your subject, but it's a combination of those things. Yes, this has a wide aperture, at least for this type of focal range at f2.8, but it's not just the wide aperture that gives you that subject separation. It's also the focal length and how far you are from the subject. So it's not just the focal length itself, but how much distance you put between you and your subject, and then where your subject is in relation to their background. So if you look in this shot here, I have my sister-in-law. She's actually taking a shot with the EOS R. I have the 70-200 on the R5. And looking out at this is another shot where I took it only at 100 millimeters. So this is not even the total compression I could get from this vantage point, but you see the sand that's actually closest to us, that distance between her and the sand, and then the distance out off towards the water and eventually Haystack Rock, Cannon Beach, fantastic place. That is a large sort of gap to cover, but the way that I have this image composed, it almost makes that space between her and I, and then the space between her and the water feel almost the same. It really pulls it in, and we'll get to focal compression in a sec, but you can tell that she's really in focus. You have some of that nice blur in the background. And this is what I'm talking about with subject separation, is you have more intense separation of a subject based on the distance you can put between the subject, how wide your aperture can go, and how far out your focal length is. I should just do a whole video on focal compression and how subject separation works. Say all that 5 times fast. No, I'm not gonna do it. Don't do that to yourself. Let's not do it. But this is one of those styles of photographs that I love to make because it's something that you can't really do any other way. You can't fake this kind of shot with software. You kind of have to do it in hardware. I think there'll probably be some ML way soon, if not already, maybe. But doing the shot in camera is just one of those epic shots that I always feel like I have to get. It's just about bringing that epic landscape, that epic environment really close, but then the way that an individual can pop off of that shot is just, it's cool, it's fun, it's awesome, and it just gives you a sense like you're there with that person, and it's all sort of happening right in front of you. So the third piece here, which I was already alluding to with subject separation, is getting that focal compression, right? This is where we're bringing the foreground and the background kind of tight together in one shot. And this shot, I think, does a great job of showing you, I'm on this cliff, there's this grass sort of on the cliff edge that's maybe 10 feet out in front of me, and we have this sort of nice blur to it because of the focal compression that we're getting in the combination of the focal range along with the wide aperture. And then the shot just goes on for miles. Literally, it goes on for miles. We see these sort of sun-kissed rocks from the sunset. There's some photographers out on the beach. Gotcha. Caught Grammon. Does anyone remember Caught Grammon? Ooh, if you remember Caught Grammon, leave a comment down below because that's a throwback. But you see, there's just layers and layers and layers to this shot. You have the beach right in front of us, but then there's the second set of waves where there's this cove and then these mountains, the clouds. It's all kind of building, but it doesn't feel too far off. It's all kind of pulled towards us. And that's what focal compression can do for you, is it can kind of lay out all those distant elements in your shot and really stack them up against sort of the forefront of the image that you're trying to make, where it just kind of feels like you have tunnel vision going into this unique, beautiful landscape. I shot this out actually at Bandon at sunset, which if you're gonna go out there, I would highly recommend. If you're doing the Oregon coast, definitely stop off in Bandon, probably one of the best places you can stop at. But the wind there is gnarly. I felt like I was gonna get ripped off of that cliff at any moment. And so we just had to take a lot of precautions, keep as much weight on us as possible, and just be careful near any edges out there. So that's an important thing to note here is, especially if you're shooting with a telephoto lens, always be aware of your surroundings because you don't wanna, you just wanna be safe. You know, travel is fun, take care of yourself, watch out for stuff like that. That's my warning. But yeah, so many good things about this shot. You can see we got these birds down here, which is really fun. Yeah, just the way that all these cliffs, this whole stretch is nuts. I think this is probably a good 6 miles that we're looking down at least here, and it all feels very, and I'm not squinting off in the horizon to catch those layers. That's something you can really only do once you have something beyond that sort of 100 millimeter, like the 105 on the kit lens. You can really start, once you push past that, that focal range, really get some compression that you won't find in any other, they won't find in most places, let's put it that way. So this leads into something about travel that lends itself well to the Canon 70-200. Even though this lens does have a lot of focal compression, I found it even at 70 worked really well just for taking portraits. You can move kind of between 70 and 100 and get that sort of 85 millimeter really tight portrait look to it. Obviously, I showed you guys some shots here at 100 and 135. You can go all the way out to 200 if that, you know, works for your composition. I think this is my 4th time. Yeah, this was my 4th time now going through the Oregon coast, and every time I go through there I try to stop at different locations or see different places at different times, and I think there's something about having a focal range as versatile as this lens that lends itself to be a go-to shot, where I feel very comfortable shooting people relatively near me with that 70 millimeter focal length. But if I need that sort of far out compressed landscape shot, I can get it between 100 and 200. I don't think I really thought that out when I first set out. I was really just kind of thinking, I'll take the 15-35 and just shoot wide and see what I can get with that. But really, I think this powered through the trip, giving me shots that I just wasn't even thinking about. And I think that's one of the best things about having a lens like this in your kit, especially if you do a lot of photography at home, whether you're doing it for work, you're shooting weddings, you're shooting portraits, you're probably staying somewhere between that 35 and 85 millimeter range. But when you get out sort of into an environment like this and you want to do something different and you want to produce something that's going to really put a signature on that trip for you, this lens is it, man. It's you know, this lens is gonna cover a lot of stuff in an unknown environment, especially if you're out, especially in the United States or most of North America, where once you get out of any major city, there's a lot of space. You can be the social distancing champion of the world very easy, just getting 20 minutes, 30 minutes outside of a major city center in most of this great North America that we are based in. I think another thing to think about with this particular lens, now for all you photographers out there that shoot both on mobile and on a dedicated system, interchangeable lens system, something like the Canon EOS R5, the R, the R6, the RP, any of these cameras, the R3, ooh, coming soon. There's so many videos coming out right now, especially in 2021, about people who can take great shots with, whether it's the iPhone 12 Pro Max or the Galaxy S21 Ultra. Even some of the Pixel phones shoot just incredible images. And you can see all these comparison videos on YouTube where people are saying, hey, can you tell the difference? And if we're being honest with ourselves, sometimes I can, but not every time, right? You can take great shots with your phone. And I already kind of made a video about how you can try to get some of this focal compression, sort of fake it by stacking a telephoto moment lens on top of the telephoto lens on an iPhone. But even then, you're only kind of getting out to 145 max. Being able to go out to 200 and just having that dedicated glass between 70 and 200, man, your shots will look nothing like what phones are producing today. And I think that's a big deal, especially in 2021, where we're still trying to have engagement on social, especially if you're producing content for social and you want something that's going to look different than the average influencer or someone who is taking shots, great shots on their phone. They aren't going to have a focal range like this. To put it in perspective, most phones have like a standard lens today that is considered somewhere between like 24 and like 35 millimeter focal range. There's a lot of ultra wides going onto phones now. Those are usually less than 20 millimeters. And then you have something like a telephoto lens built into your phone, which may be an equivalent somewhere between like a 40 something to like 60. I think the iPhone 12 Pro Max is like a 65 millimeter equivalent. But what that means is this entire focal range is not covered by your phone. What that's gonna lead to is that is going to lead a focal compression and sort of signature in your image that no phone's gonna really be able to touch. I do have a few drawbacks for this lens. So the first drawback that I have for this is that the control ring is choked up close to the mount. So unlike something like the 24-70 where you have the control ring out in the front, if you shoot a lot with the 24-70 or the 15-35, or even like the kit lens, the 24-105 f4, you're used to that control ring being out there. Now I use that to control my aperture, so it's a little weird when I throw this on and I'm expecting that control ring to be out front and it's actually choked up back here. Now this is a benefit if you're coming from that EF to RF adapter with the control ring. It'll feel natural, it'll feel like it's right where it should be. But for all of us who've been shooting on RF native glass, especially, you know, like I mentioned the lenses prior, this could feel a little weird, take a little bit, you know, getting used to, and it did. It took me a little bit of getting used to on this trip, but thankfully after a few days, I just knew once I had this sort of weight on my camera that, okay, I'm coming in tight to adjust that aperture with the control ring. This is kind of the second drawback I have for this. These are all really nitpicks. This lens is great, but I do wish that there were markings for 85 millimeters and something between 135 and 200. I often just found myself, when I would try to compose a shot, wanting sort of that like 85 punch, that signature 85 focal range for like a portrait. I often found myself being like, God, does this feel right? Is this actually 85? Am I dead center between 70 and 100? I like being able to chimp up real quick, see where I'm at, lock in, and then just go. Versus like guessing. And then I kind of felt the same thing with the 135. It was like, okay, I'm at 135, you know, can I lock in something between 135 and 200 that feels unique? I don't know, 160, 170. And so I feel like that would actually kind of help if I had those markings on there. But that's just another nit. Finally, a big thing to consider, and if you've watched other reviews of telephoto lenses, especially on the Canon EF platforms, this is gonna be news to you. This lens is not compatible with the RF 2X telephoto converter, at least as of making this video. It looks like that converter is only compatible with the 100 to 500 RF, and then the fixed focal, I think F8, F11, 600 millimeter and 800 millimeter lenses that Canon makes for the RF mount. What that means is in the past where you could buy the EF version of this lens with the EF mount teleconverter and get something like a 400 millimeter range all the way out with that converter, you're not gonna be able to do that with this lens. Now, I think that has something to do with them putting the body in this sort of form factor for the lens. So when you extend this lens out, right, it comes out of its body. I think it has something to do with that, but I'm just mostly guessing at that point. But for me, that's a worthwhile trade-off. If I get a smaller lens and it's not compatible with that teleconverter, fine. I do appreciate the size of this. This fits in my pack so much better. So much easier to have this on my camera continuously because of that weight being sort of tightened up all into this package, which is great. But I do wish Canon would just make a teleconverter that worked for this lens. The teleconverter does work with the 100 to 500, but I think it only works from the 300 focal range up, if I read the specs correctly. I'm still kind of piecing together. The Canon documentation that I found isn't great. If you know the answer, please leave it in the comments below. But yeah, this lens is not going to be compatible with the RF two times teleconverter. I think there's a 1.4 teleconverter as well that it is not compatible with as well. So you're not gonna be able to get that double focal range out, but I think the trade-offs are still worth it at this point. So I'm glad I got to share with you guys how awesome this lens is. I'll put some more photos in the outro so you guys can just see some of the epic shots I was able to get. If you're heading out traveling, leave your Instagram maybe down below your handle in the comments so I could check out your travel shots. That'd be pretty cool. Or hit me up on Instagram. Give me a follow down there. I'll link my Instagram down below so you guys can check out some of my shots that I've already posted. I have a ton more to post too, so you guys can get in on that. With that, I just want to say thank you to all of my subscribers. Y'all, you all, I don't know. I feel like ever since I went to Texas, I've been saying y'all a lot, which I like. I kind of like y'all, but I am honored by all of you who have subscribed to this channel. I make videos about photography, videography, tech because I got so much out of this community here on YouTube. I'm not formally educated in any way, did not go to college. I learned so much of what I know about photography and videography and technology through YouTube. So it's an honor and privilege for me to put something back here onto this platform, share with you guys what I've learned, and that you guys show up and subscribe to this channel. So if you're not, be honored to have you here. Please be kind, both in life and in the comments below, and like this video. And like this video if you're gonna get some travel vibes on this year. You know, it's, I think in order to be beautiful, you got to appreciate beauty. And part of appreciating beauty is kind of getting out of your environment, especially when you appreciate beauty in other places, other people, their cultures, and just the nature of our planet. We have a very incredible place to call home in the cosmos, in the universe, in this little solar system, and to be grateful for it, to enjoy it, I think that's the one of the best things we can do in life. So again, thank you all so much for watching, and we'll do it again soon.